For nearly 15 years, the ranch at the edge of the Red Mesas had only one heartbeat, Caleb Hart's. The old cowboy rose before the sun every morning, his knees stiff, his breath slow and measured, the silence of the land greeting him like an old companion that never asked questions. His hands were rough with scars earned from wire fences, frozen rains, and years of honest work that never once begged for applause. The house creaked when he walked through it, not in complaint but recognition, as if the wood itself remembered when laughter used to live there. His wife's photograph still stood on the mantel, dusted every Sunday, her smile frozen in a moment before sickness took her. His only son lay buried beneath a flag that came home without explanations. People in town said Caleb chose loneliness, but they didn't know the truth. That loneliness chose him first, and he simply learned how to survive inside it. The land understood him. The horses did too. They never asked why he spoke so little, or why some nights he sat on the porch staring into the dark as if listening for voices long gone. The ranch had become a fortress against grief, built of habit and routine, and Caleb believed foolishly that nothing could breach it anymore. That belief shattered on a wind-scorched afternoon when dust rose on the far road like a warning from the past. Caleb noticed it while mending a fence line, his eyes narrowing beneath the brim of his hat. Travelers were rare this far out, especially ones on foot. As the figures emerged from the haze, his breath caught not from fear but recognition. 5 women walked slowly toward the ranch, their steps heavy, their bodies bent under exhaustion and grief. They wore faded Apache dresses, torn and stained from miles of hard travel, hair braided in the old way, faces marked by hunger and loss. One carried a child tied against her back with a woven sling. Another leaned on a carved stick, her leg wounded, blood dried dark against her skin. They stopped at the edge of the property, not crossing the invisible line, as if the land itself demanded permission. The tallest among them stepped forward, her chin lifted despite the tremble in her hands, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of generations. "We ask for shelter," she said. "Not charity, not pity. Just ground to stand on before night takes us." Caleb felt the old instincts rise, the ones that said strangers brought trouble, that survival meant distance. He had seen what fear did to men. He had seen what war did to women like these. And yet something in their eyes, especially the children's, cut through his defenses sharper than any blade. He knew who they were before they said it. Apache widows. Their men gone. Their homes burned or seized. Their protection stolen by a world that no longer cared who paid the price. The wind carried the smell of dust and desperation, and suddenly the ranch felt too quiet, too empty to turn them away. Caleb swallowed, his voice rough from years of disuse. "You can stay the night," he said at last. "One night. Then we'll see." The relief that crossed their faces wasn't loud. It was quiet, dignified, as if hope itself had learned not to speak too boldly. As the sun sank behind the mesas, the ranch changed. Firelight flickered where darkness once ruled. Soft voices murmured in Apache, blending with the crackle of burning wood. The women moved with careful respect, never touching what wasn't offered, never stepping where they weren't invited. Caleb watched from a distance, unsure why his chest felt tight. When the children laughed, real laughter, thin but alive, it echoed against the hills in a way the land hadn't heard in years. That night, as Caleb lay in bed, he realized something unsettling. For the first time since his family died, he wasn't alone with his memories, and that frightened him more than solitude ever had. Morning arrived not with silence, but with life. Caleb awoke to the smell of cornmeal cooking and the soft rhythm of footsteps on the porch. For a moment he thought he was dreaming, caught between past and present, but then he heard a child laugh again, unmistakably real. Outside, the women worked together without instruction, gathering water, tending the fire, moving as one body shaped by shared loss. The tall woman from the night before, her name was Apache, met Caleb's eyes without fear. "We will earn our stay," she said calmly. "We do not beg twice." Something in her words struck him. Not defiance, dignity. The kind forged by suffering, not entitlement. Caleb nodded, unsure why his throat tightened. He gave them small tasks, expecting hesitation. None came. By noon, fences were mended cleaner than he'd done them in years. The injured woman's leg was treated with herbs that smelled of earth and smoke. Knowledge older than the ranch itself. These women didn't bring chaos. They brought order born from necessity. Days passed. One night turned into many. Caleb told himself it was temporary, that they'd move on once strength returned. But the land disagreed. The horses grew calmer. The house warmed. Even the wind seemed gentler, as if listening. Stories emerged slowly by firelight, of husbands killed defending villages, of soldiers who took land and left ashes, of children taught too early how to bury the dead. Caleb listened, not interrupting, not offering empty comfort. He knew better than most that grief didn't need fixing. It needed witnesses. And as the women listened to his stories in return, of his wife, his son, the war that stole explanations, they did not turn away. In that shared silence, something powerful took root. One evening, a rider from town arrived, his voice sharp with warning. "You're harboring Apache," he said. "Men are talking." "They don't like it." Caleb felt anger rise, not the reckless kind, but the steady fire of a man who had buried too much to be afraid now. He stood taller than his years. "They're under my roof," he said simply. "That's all anyone needs to know." When the rider left, Atsa approached him, eyes filled not with fear, but gratitude and something deeper, trust. "You stand between us and harm," she said. "That makes you family." The word hit Caleb harder than any threat ever could. That night, as the fire burned low and the stars stretched endlessly overhead, Caleb realized the truth he'd been avoiding. The ranch had not been waiting to die with him. It had been waiting to live again. And these women, these widows, had not come to take from him. They had come to give him back something he thought the war had stolen forever. Purpose. If this story is stirring something inside you, if you believe that even broken lives can find new beginnings, then you already understand why stories like this matter. Stay with us. Subscribe to the channel. Because some stories don't just entertain, they remind us who we still can be.